Hello everyone. Have you ever sent a message that was completely misunderstood or received one that left you confused? Communication is something we do every day and yet it is not as always as simple as it seems. It is more than just words. It's a dynamic process that shapes how we connect with other people. Let's say for example, from the moment a thought forms to the instant it's received and interpreted, countless factors came into play. What we say, how we say it, and even the environment we're in can influence how we perceive the message. But when one part of this process breaks down, the meaning can be lost. So, by understanding how these elements work together is the key to clear, effective communication. So, today, we will dive into the definition of communication and its essential components because when we understand how it works, we unlock the power to connect, collaborate, and make our voices truly heard. So, let's get started.
Good day, everyone. Thank you for your wonderful introduction, Mr. Francisco. Moving on to the definition of communication. First and foremost, what is communication? Communication, in simpler means, is the process of exchanging information, ideas, emotions between individuals through verbal and nonverbal or written means. Communication is consisted of eight elements, including sender, context, messages, medium, channel, feedback, receiver, last and finally, noise. Elements of communication will be further discussed by my groupmate, Miss Kalumbiran. That's all, and thank you.
In this discussion, we will be discussing the eight elements of communication and how these elements work together. First in the element of communication is the sender. Now, what is a sender? A sender is a person or group that will start a communication process by sharing their ideas or information to the receiver. Think of the sender as the start of the communication. For example, if I send you a message, then I'm the sender. If he writes me a letter, then he is the sender. As simple as that. Next in the element of communication is the context. And what is context? Context is the meaning of the message, considering the setting, the occasion, the purpose, and the relationship between the communicators. For example, a formal speech at a graduation ceremony will sound a bit different from a casual chat with friends.
Thank you for that introduction for the elements of communication, Ms. Kalubiran. So for our third and fourth elements of communication, we have the message and the medium. Message. A message is the information that is being conveyed by the speaker, and it should be clear, accurate, and relevant to the audience or to the person you are talking to's interest. An example of message is this presentation that we use to convey the information and ideas to the definitions and elements of communication. So the next element is the medium. A medium is any type of communication techniques that the speaker is using to convey their ideas. An example of this is the hieroglyphs that the ancient Egyptians used to show their history, and cuneiform, a written medium that the Sumerian used in a clay table using a stylus.
Let's talk about receiver and channel. A receiver is a person that gets the message in the communication process. Their role is to interpret, understand, and respond to the message based on their knowledge, experience, and perception. Effective communication depends on how well the receiver can make sense of the message. For example, you, the audience listening to us, are receivers. However, receiver is not always a person. It can also be an animal. For instance, your dog, your cat, or simply your pet. You respond to your voice and gestures, making them receivers too. Then, how about channel? Channel in communication is a method used to transmit message from the sender to the receiver. It serves as pathway through which communication occurs. Simple example will be the PowerPoint presentation we're using right now. It visually delivers message to you, the receiver. Other form of channel includes spoken words, email, phone calls, and even body language. And that is receiver and channel.
Let's talk about the last two important concepts in communication: feedback. is the receiver response to the sender's message. It helps the sender know if their message was understood correctly. For example, if you ask your friend, "Did you understand the directions?" and they reply, "Yes, I'll meet you there." That's feedback. Noise, on the other hand, is anything that disrupts communication. It can be internal, like when someone is distracted, or external, like a bad phone connection. Imagine talking on the phone and the line is crackling, or trying to explain something to someone who isn't paying attention. That's noise interfering with the message.
Although these two concepts that I'm going to tell you right now are not on the module, it's also worth mentioning as well. These two are encoding and decoding. So, what is encoding? Encoding is how the sender turns thought into words, gestures, or symbols. For instance, when you write a heartfelt letter, you're encoding your emotions into words. Decoding, on the other hand, is when the receiver interprets the message to understand its meaning. So, if your friend reads the letter and feels the emotion you conveyed, that's successful decoding.
To sum it all up, communication is a crucial part of our life because we always use it to express our thoughts, share information, socialize with others, and create a connection with everyone. You may not be aware of it, but we often use the elements of communication that were discussed earlier when communicating with someone. As a matter of fact, what I'm doing right now is already a form of communication. And definitely, some of the elements of communication are also being used. For example, I am the sender, and all of you that are listening serve as the receiver. Obviously, the message here is what I'm basically saying right now. The channel is also being used because I'm conveying my message by means of verbal communication because I'm speaking. And the mode of communication is English. Finally, the feedback is also observed because responses or reactions were generated as the message is conveyed. Overall, communication is a fundamental part of our life, and the elements of communication are what allows us to communicate to someone effectively. And that wraps up our presentation for today. We are the sixth group, and we would like to thank you all for listening.